My earliest memory was actually the day I ever first came out to interview the former superior. It was the October of 1995, and I had called them before. I was living out of state at the time, but I was staying with family in Buffalo. So my brother-in-law brought me out. I met the former provincial, Brother Jude, and then he had me meet with our former formation director, Brother Terrence. And so they were very welcoming, and I spent a good portion of time talking to Brother Terrence about religious life and why I felt called to religious life. And they had one of the younger brothers give me a tour of the old Sacred Heart home. And I really felt, even from the beginning, that I belonged here. I was in the Air Force for 11 years active duty, about 3 years reserve, but I had some health issues which I received a medical discharge for, and I'm a disabled veteran at this point, have been since 1993. So I got out, had to get honorable discharge from the reserves, and went on with civilian life. I was in what we call formation. That's the beginning portion of joining the community for a few years, but the brothers, the men in formation and the solemn professed or the final professed brothers had a similar schedule in some ways, where we didn't have one set time to wake up. We all woke up as long as we were awake before our first scheduled event, which was morning prayer. So getting all the formalities of what we do when we wake up and getting ready for our day. At the time, we had morning prayer and Mass at the old Sacred Heart home, the main chapel, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And Tuesdays and Fridays, we had morning prayer and a communion, because our chaplain was off those days. So the times started a little differently, depending if we had Mass or not, but the schedule was basically the same. And after that, it was breakfast for most of the brothers. And then from there, the brothers would go on to their individual daily schedules, whether they worked, and some worked in nursing. At the time, I worked in food service. And we had, of course, our leadership that performed different functions. So it all depended where you worked.
Yeah.
And of course, you had your lunchtime in between that, if you worked, you had afternoon work, and then we finished our day with evening prayer, rosary, and then the evening meal. I first started out, when I first joined, before I actually took my habit, it was with information as a visitor and a candidate. I worked as a cook and a dietary aide at the Sacred Heart home in different shifts. And then from there, I worked several jobs. I worked as a unit clerk at the Nursing and Rehab Center for a certain amount of time. I worked in fiscal services as a financial advisor, assisting nursing residents with Medicaid applications. I was trained on the switchboard at the nursing home, so that was one of my favorite jobs. I always tell people, because the switchboard reminded me of a giant remote control. You know how us men are with our remote controls, so I always enjoyed being able to forward calls to other people. So, and I also, I'm trying to think, I actually helped the therapist. It was called doing charges, putting in some of their charges for the therapy that they conducted during the day. And I worked for, I think it was 5 years, I lost track of time, but 5 years on the foundation with fundraising. And at one time, I was the olive oil brother. When we got into the olive oil selling for fundraising, I ran the olives and the olive oil program for a couple of years. And then eventually, and all during that time, eventually I joined the board of directors and the leadership as an assistant superior, then became the house superior in 2016. And I'm proud that our facilities, especially the nursing and rehab center, has been able to maintain the 5-star rating. and that through all the turmoil in the healthcare system, reimbursement and everything, that we've been able to maintain that through COVID, through everything else, and still maintain throughout the whole campus the quality of care that the Brothers been known for a century now. Just proud of the people we've been able to hire over the years, and that our upper management has been able to hire other team members that have really done some amazing things here on campus. To me, that's a fairly recent term. Instead of referring to people as employees, it's team and co-workers from the top and bottom. And I think that's also reflected in our German roots, because our brothers in Germany don't necessarily refer to people as employees. They've always referred to them as co-workers. So the German word Mitarbeiter, co-worker. So that's kind of where we get that from. And team, I think, brings a better value on everyone instead of saying, well, you're just an employee. But the type of people, and there's been some hard times retaining employees for various reasons, but our leadership does a very good job hiring people, and I'm really proud of the people who stay here many years. There have been some people here on campus who worked here way before I became a brother. Some have been here 40 years, 35 years, 38, so on. And I'm especially happy when somebody leaves, like a nurse or a nurse's aide, and they come back. And I think that does start from the brothers, because although we're not blood brothers, we do form a family community here. Although we're getting smaller and smaller, we have carried on that family community the times we are able to spend together. And I think it does pass along to the rest of the people on campus, team members. And when I say team members, which I hesitated to say before, that's also including volunteers.
Right.
Because I knew early on when we started using, sometimes people would say the team members and volunteers, and I had to remind people that volunteers are team members. So, and that's especially one of the things I'm proud of, is all the volunteers we have, and our volunteer coordinator does a wonderful job. The one main volunteer coordinator, she does a wonderful job organizing that program. And but just the wonderful people that we have in the area who have come to volunteer.
Yeah.
And many of them have been because they had family members here. And sometimes, unfortunately, they wait until a parent or somebody passes away. But once they get past a portion of their grief, they say, well, I'm ready to come back and I want to contribute to the Brothers of Mercy now. In some ways, we feel like we're an unknown, like the Brothers of Mercy, just out in Clarence. But really, when you talk to people, we are well known, at least through the Catholic Diocese of Buffalo, we're known to all corners of the diocese. But I think it goes beyond that, and there are many people around Western New York, in the southern tier, up in the Niagara County, or different places besides just the North Towns in Erie County, that when I say I'm one of the, oh, you're from the Brothers of Mercy, we've heard about you, or we heard you have good care there.
Yeah.
I say, yeah, and I always say, yeah, so if you ever need us, we're there.